Good evening, my dear friends, and welcome to episode number 17 of The Dermatologist and the Rabbi. And unfortunately, it's just the dermatologist today. The Rabbi is in Israel. A lot to unpack on this parsha, on this chapter that is coming up this Saturday. And as I tell you before, there are never coincidences. Well, this Saturday is going to be a partial eclipse, not of the heart, but of the sun. It will be seen in Europe, it will be seen in New York, and in Alaska. And it's funny that the parsha, the chapter, is actually called seeing, Re'eh, see. And what are we being asked to see? What is really the power of sight meaning? We'll unpack that, and we'll unpack a little bit more how that relates to today's world and some other very important messages in this last address of the greatest leader that ever lived, Moses, to his flock, to the children that he raised and brought with him all the way to the land of Israel, but himself could not enter. So it starts like that. Re'eh, see. I put before you blessings and a curse. Blessing if you follow my commandments, and curses if you don't. Notice that it doesn't say curses if you do the wrong thing. It says curses if you don't do the right thing. And that brings us to the very important message that it's not enough to do what is good, but it is important to make sure that you don't stay silent, that you don't ignore a situation that requires you to do something good. So if you see an opportunity to do a mitzvah, to do something good, older lady passing with some things that she was carrying, ask her, do you need some help? I remember I was walking down from the funeral of one of the heroes in Israel, in Jerusalem, in Har Bayit. Not Har Bayit, in Har Herzl. And it was to the hero that was the commanding officer of the rescue mission, the very daring rescue mission that saved 4 hostages. And he sacrificed his own life because he didn't want to have a lot of collateral damage. Anyway, whatever. As I was walking down the road back to my dormitory, which was in the units of the oncological patients, I was having the honor and privilege of volunteering at Hadassah Ein Kerem in Jerusalem, teaching also people from the West Bank, Palestinian Muslims and Christians, dermatology and surgery. I noticed this lady, older lady, walking with lots of bags, and I asked her, can I help you? And she's like, no, I'm just around the corner here going to my home. But she put a smile on her face, and you know what? It lifted my heart up. So trying to do something good gives you so much more in return. But let's say you're saying, I don't really understand what you're talking about. Well, let's take an example as a dermatologist, right? What do you expect me to do? What is the right thing to do? You can say, Hippocrates said, first do no harm. But in reality, Hippocrates never said that. It's not in his oath. It's not in his ideas. It was later on, a 17th or maybe 19th century English and other physicians who said that. But in reality, what he said, the first thing important to do is 2 things when you deal with an infection. First, you do the best to help, but at least don't hurt, don't do the wrong thing. So first you do the help, right? You need to help. And take that as an example. If I see a wound that is festering, if I don't treat it with an antibiotic, am I okay? Shouldn't be sued? Or the fact that I ignored it and didn't treat it at all is malpractice? And the answer is, this is a curse. It's a curse to me. It's a curse to the patient. I would not treat it. The wound will fester and will get worse. Maybe the patient will go into the ICU, into the intensive care unit. So it's a very, very important lesson. And as I was reading it, I was, wow. They're not saying if you're going to worship other gods, you're going to get cursed. If you're not going to worship me, you're going to be cursed. And does that mean necessarily that actively God will punish you? Or does it mean that you lose the opportunity to benefit from the amazing spiritual, emotional experience of seeing the light penetrating into your soul and radiating and warming not only yourself but others? There's a very beautiful story that Rabbi Nachman of Breslov said. Well, there's a couple of them. Well, there's one thing where his students were asking him, why are you blessing the bad people? The people who do evil. He says, well, I look at them and I see the spark that God sees, the spark of good, the spark of kindness. And that's the person I pray and I bless. And it reminds me of how the Jews handled the situation with the Germans, who spilled so much of Jewish blood just because they were Jews, second, third generation Jews. Some of them were even Christians, Protestants, and they still murdered them. Some of them were married to non-Jews, and they still broke their families and their children. But the Jews did not go ahead and try to retaliate in kind. And the interesting thing is that as I was in Israel, one of the families that I met, beautiful, beautiful family, they are a Christian family. They go once a year to the Black Forest. Their families are in Germany. In 1946, right, before 1948, before Israel was reestablished, the third time, right, it was established again in the land that was promised to them by God to Jacob, also known as Israel. They came over his parents, and they decided to do something back to amend for the crimes that their parents did and their nation did. And they decided to build a home for charity. I visited that home. Their children, their son is handling it now, and their kids, they're an amazing family. What a blessing. And one of their sons went to an elite unit in the IDF and unfortunately died in the war in Gaza. He was killed in action. And he was killed on Hanukkah. And they saw in it a special gift, because it was specifically on Hanukkah that he was given the light, that as he died in honor of the heroes that fought to rededicate the Jewish temple, rededicate the Jewish religion. And if they didn't succeed, there won't be Christianity, there won't be Islam. We would be losing so much of that light, that direction that we are given in the Bible. And that's the beauty. So when you see the good in people, which is very hard, very, very hard, because you want so much to retaliate. You want so much to hurt back when you're hurt. So many times I am at fault doing that. You have to hold yourself back. You have to take a breath and see the good in people. So here's another story that Rabbi Nachman from Breslov shared. And the story is about another rabbi who used to always see the good in people and in situations. I was about to say that one of my closest friend, Ami Dantakar, he's an emergency room doctor. I'm flying to his wedding in Texas soon. Second wedding, but irrelevant. He always said that, how come you always see the good in people? I wish I did, and you think very kindly of me, but I do try. I do try to see the good and to always try to handle the situation with a smile. So anyway, so this story about that rabbi, this person comes to him and says to him, how come I always tend to choose the bad choices, in my life. It's kind of like I'm cursed. How can I change it? And he listens to him very attentively. He doesn't interrupt him. Something we all need to learn, including me. And then he tells him, you missed the greatest blessing. He's like, what? What blessing did I miss? The opportunity. Every day you have a chance to choose a new blessing. It's the way you look at things. Look for the good. Look for the opportunity and do that. And that gentleman went ahead and trying to bring good into himself, into his life, not because he was worried about curses, but because he wanted to do good, right? See the good. He ended up finding something good here, something good there. And as he did those good things, he actually didn't realize, but he was not only inspiring others, but he was investing good into other people and bringing goodness around him. And that, with time, became such a blessing that everybody was shocked and surprised how this person who always used to choose the wrong thing ended up suddenly choosing the right thing. So that is the one message, right? The second message that is in the Parsha is the idea that when you bring sacrifice to God, you have to bring it in one unit. And why was it so important? Because it unifies the people, it unifies the Jews, and they would do it first in Beit El. Eventually it would move over to Jerusalem, where they would all sacrifice together. And when it's separated, when they tried to bring sacrifices in Israel separately, that's when there was a division and eventually there was loss. They were worried that the Jews would go back to Jerusalem when the tribes separated. The problem was that they lost much more than their kingship. They lost. Where are those 10 tribes? They lost 10 tribes, right? And other messages is the holidays of Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuot. Very important holidays. We're not going to unpack those holidays now, but some of them are not too far from us, so we will talk about them. Another important thing that they're talking about there is the need for taking care of the poor and giving money also to the teachers. Very, very interesting. So the Levites, I'm related to the Levites, right? Dr. Levit, Eyal Levit, were supposed to be there as teachers. So they didn't own land. And because they didn't own land, they couldn't obviously grow the produce. And others were responsible to raise money to give them sustenance. So they would give them from the fruits, or they would pay the money. But they were responsible to have a Levite in each tribe in different locations so that they can make sure that they are staying there and they would share the knowledge, the wisdom, and they'll be the conduit, the information. They were not supposed to learn. One of the greatest example is the fact that there is a Talmud, and it's right here in New York, of the Berdichev wood choppers. The wood chopper is a very difficult kind of work. You'd think, when will they have time? Who needs to think much when they do wood chopping? And yet they would meet weekly to discuss the Talmud, this very complicated book. Guys, I tried it. I learned it. To me, it was boring. Maybe I didn't have the patience that I have right now, but it was complicated and very tough. It's like lawyers. You picked one half, you picked another half, who owns the halves, and etc., etc. And they were doing that, and they were discussing that. So you're not exempt from learning it, but you still need to have a teacher. Make yourself a teacher, and you have to sustain them. What a beautiful idea. What a beautiful concept. Think about it. This is before schools were ever established, before the madrasa, before Alexander the Great had his Aristotle teacher, before Hippocrates was teaching, or Plato or Socrates. So this is really key of the pillars of the civilization that was grown and created from that later on. Another important thing is not only for them, but also for the poor. Take care of your poor. One of the things that was noticed by the Christian priests that traveled around the world to proselytize was that you didn't see poor Jews. And you're like, how come you don't see poor Jews? At least that's how they wrote it. We're talking about 7th century, 8th century. They were going into the Arabian area. I mean, it's a dangerous job, obviously, because they would be killed if they were caught trying to proselytize Christianity. You were not allowed to. Jews were not allowed to. Christians were not allowed to. In the Pact of Umar, which was around 708 CE, created in Baghdad and Iraq. But they would go and they would report about that, right? So they would say, how come they don't? Because they take care of their people, because they have special systems to take care of the poor. And that is very, very important, because we need to have systems to help those that are less fortunate. And you never know when it will help you back. And you're like, if they want to, they'll work hard, they'll get it. Yes, but that's why the biggest mitzvah, the biggest commandment is to not give someone food, but actually to give them a job. Which brings us to another point that Moses is saying. Every 7th year, and the 7th year is not, we'll start counting one for each person. No, it was a regulated 7 year. It's called Shemitah. We spoke about it on previous Parsha, if you remember, with Rabbi Epfaur. But this is the 7th year. You have to forgive all debts, and you have to free the slaves. Yes, slavery was something that happened and was accepted around the world. You would conquer someone, they would be a slave. Also, if you couldn't pay someone, then you'd go to be a slave for them. But few things. Think about it. As they were slaves, they were only slaves for a certain amount of time. They needed to be taken care of. You don't mistreat them. I mean, if you think about the Jews working in the slave camps, they were not slave camps for the Germans. They took care of them worse than they would take care of slaves. I mean, they would maybe even win the war. They would do better if they took care of them. But they didn't take care of them. They didn't bring them food. They tortured them. They laughed at them. They would throw mice up their spine in their torn shirt and say, don't move. If you move, we whip you. Crazy, crazy stuff. Into their pants, they would throw mice and tell them to stay. Anyway, forget about it. This is crazy. So the lost my train of thought for a second. The idea is that we were talking about the poor, taking care of the poor, the slaves, right? So you'll also learn a profession while you're there. So when you come out, you get some knowledge, and you were required to, when they leave, give them gifts. Yeah, a slave leave with gifts. And how come? It says, because don't forget, you were slaves once in Egypt. And when you left, you received gifts from the Egyptians as you left. You were once slaves. Don't forget that. Be kind to others. What a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful message from Moses. We have to learn that. Compassion. You never know when the tables will be turned back. Think about that. See that. Remember that. Internalize that. The other important thing that, we discussed, why help them? It's my money, I earned it, why help them? Well, if they didn't do that, if they didn't leave 10th of their harvest unharvested, if they just gave it away, then the poor people will not be able to go and harvest. Look at all those people hardworking, collecting those recycling bottles, huge bags they carry of themselves, and then they go to the store and give them for 5 cents each. Have you done that? Have you tried? You should. It's an experience you should do with your kids. It's a humbling experience. They'll understand the value of money and hard work. But that's what the poor people were doing. They were going to the fields and they were cutting whatever was left. After they were done, they were not stealing. They were cutting what was left. And if they were carrying those shibboleth, those packs of tied wheat, and some of the wheat will fall. They were not allowed to pick it up by law. Those people falling behind would pick them up, so they would walk, and if something fell behind, they collected it, and from that they made a little bit of bread for themselves. Why am I telling you that story? Because if it wasn't for that, we would not have had the Messiah. Yeah, King David was the great-grandson of Ruth, the Moabite, who was not Jewish. She converted to Judaism, right? And she was seen by a man who was watching his fields, and he fell in love with her. And he asked about her. And then they got married. And then later on, you get King David, you get Jesus, you get Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, that is such a wise man, and we learn so much from. So, you do a good deed, it'll come. Maybe not to you, maybe not to your son, but maybe to your great-grandson. By the way, thank you, Dr. Fulmus, for the message. I'll let the patient know that you will take him. I'm very grateful. So it was a message appearing on my screen over there. There were a few other things that are important, and one of them is the Haftarah. And if you remember, we spoke about what is the Haftarah. Haftarah is something that we repeat, and during the Greek times, they forbade us from reading from the Bible. So what did we do? We read from the prophets, from the kings. And over there, one of the things that we read is the 7 blessings. This is going to be, I think, the 3rd or the 4th. I can't remember, sorry. I think it's the 3rd, okay, of the blessings of Isaiah. And he's talking there that God will come back to you, even though he's going to send you away. And if you remember, we spoke, he prophesied between 700 and 740 before the Common Era. That's the time during the Assyrian Empire that ended up expelling the 10 tribes. We just talked about the lost 10 tribes, right? The division that happened when they did the center of sacrifice, which Moses warned them. They did it at a different location than Jerusalem. They were supposed to all go to Jerusalem. And I can't believe it. They're saying that Jerusalem was never a center site for the Jews. Ugh. And the historical books that they're now recreating, trying to change history again, talking about Re'eh, see. Don't change history, because you will never learn if you change history. Forget about mine, yours. The opportunity to learn. If you cannot see the facts now, if you cannot see and accept the past, you will never learn in the future. You will never grow. Those who, for example, claim that the crimes they did never happened, when they change the history, they will repeat the same crimes. You got to take it in. Take responsibility. Take extreme ownership, like Leif Babin said in his book, Extreme Ownership, and Marco Willings. Great book, by the way. So, the message of Isaiah is, if you will turn back to me, I will still take you and accept you. And that is beautiful from God. What a message. After everything. Last thing I would say is it reminds me also of the wisdom of some of the women. Women? Yeah. There is one woman who was spoken about in the Talmud. Only one, I know. But she was brilliant. Her name was Bruria. And Bruria was the wife of a famous rabbi. And one day, he was, being harassed by some hoodlums. And he said, God, please curse them. And Bruria, his wife, says to him, excuse me, why would you ask God to curse them? Shouldn't you instead ask God to bless them so they do good things? And he's like, wife, you're right. And he prayed that God will bless them and do some good things to them. That's before Jesus said, slap the other cheek. I mean, did he really mean slap the other cheek or not? That's another story. Again, The person who is responsible for Christianity the way it is today is actually Paul, or Saul in Hebrew. He was not Peter or the brother of Jesus, who were supposed to be the people who would follow. I mean, he changed everything. Whatever, long story, and we're digressing. So, we said about, sorry, it's already late night. We said about the fact that Isaiah is giving the opportunity that if you return to us, you'll be blessed again, and that is really something that should be reminded to us, to always try and give people a chance, like the story that Rabbi Nachman from Breslov shared. Try to see the good in people and bless them. Like Bruria said, why not bless them? And when he blessed them, guess what happened? They actually end up doing good stuff, and those people changed. He didn't ask, hurt me again, but he prayed for God to bless them. And indeed, they became good. And that reminds me of another story from the Talmud. It's a beautiful story. There is someone, and a movie has to be made about him. Great man. He was a gladiator, a Jewish gladiator, circus person, a little bit of a criminal in his early life. And later on he became a rabbi and a smart Talmid Chacham. And he spoke about things differently because he had a different experience. We're talking again about the idea of vision. And that is why I'm bringing those examples to you. So his name is Reish Lakish, Rabbi Reish Lakish. And Rabbi Reish Lakish spoke about the reason why the Talmud says that Noah was righteous in his own time. What does it mean he was righteous in his own time? And some people said, well, if it was in our time, he won't be considered righteous because he really didn't do anything special, Noah, right? He wasn't like Abraham or like Moses doing all these good things. But Reish Lakish says, excuse me, if during that time, when everybody around him was so bad that God needed to wipe them out, right? He did the big flood. He was being good. How much more good would he be if he was surrounded by good people like we are right now? That is vision. That is vision. Think about it. How easy it is to stay away from chocolate if chocolate is not around you. That's my bane. That's my weak spot. So, well, how much more would you be able to do? Anyway, in closing, I would suggest and I would wish for you all to try and look for the good in people, for the good in yourself, for the good, not only the one that you see, but the one that you imagine is potential in people. And when you will do that, you will see how they will blossom. You'll see how you will blossom and you will grow. This Shabbat, as you light the candles, this Shabbat, as part of the sun will be eclipsed, you should be the light, the warmth, the reason for happiness, even in dark times. And remember, the curse is not only by doing bad. The curse is by staying silent, by not taking the opportunity to do good. God bless you. As we say at Levit Dermatology, health and beauty is our duty. Be good, do good, say good, and may good come your way. And I know I'm not here with a rabbi or with my buddies in the workout gym. I had to do it before Shabbat, so hopefully you still enjoyed it. And if you liked, please Let me know if you have any questions. Send me a DM. Have a Shabbat Shalom. God bless you. Am Yisrael Chai.